Now, why say all the names, especially if you can read them yourselves? You see, we really want to feel that we are together in this. It's very easy. First of all, unfortunately, despite all our efforts, my eyes are the weak link, and I can't quite read the names fully. But we want to not only feel that we are connected, that you all are here in the center, or I am in all of your houses at once, or something. But not just that, but we are all connected who are all watching. You know, not just that, well, I'm watching this, but I don't know who else is watching, or maybe I do, or whatever. Because that's part of what keeps our community strong, is our connection with God, our individual connection with God, our individual connection with Guru, our connection at any center with the acharyas there, of course, but also, most importantly, or at least as importantly, our connection with one another. And that's what can get lost sometimes, when we're in an online setting. It's just that I tend to be unidimensional, and I'm only focused on what I see in this direction, but not also what else is happening around me. So Dharmini had this idea that we could read the names off, and in our sadhana, morning sadhana, which many of you were at this morning and even yesterday, we're doing this, also including these same names in the healing prayer, just as a way of, again, connecting. And it'll be nice when we get to see each other, or when you call each other, or are connected in other ways, that we'll have this memory, oh yes, I remember that, Satya was there, and so on. So we're doing what we can. It's all a big experiment. It's new for all of us, and yet there's something quite interesting about it. There's a silver lining in this dark cloud. In the dark cloud, forget the coronavirus, which I don't mean really forget it, but without that dark cloud, just the dark cloud of separation. Dharmini and I were talking to Haridasji and Romaji, and they were saying, what can we do? Because the physical connecting is so important. It's the best way. And of course, it's not physical. It's just easier to share in vibration when we're all in the same place. That's the power of having a center. And so we're doing what we can, given the situation that Divine Mother has thrust upon us. I sent some of you a recording of a class I did online. I might be able to send it to others. We'll see. I'll also send you the recordings of the Sunday satsang. We're able to get audio out faster than video, so that you can tune into some of the other things Dharmini and I shared about this time. But no matter what we sort of think about this situation in the moment, what we have seen is that our lives have been changed. An outer circumstance has changed everything for the way in which we live. Even what we're doing here today, instead of being in person, I was laughing with someone today because some restaurants in this country, and maybe not for long though, but are closed to receiving customers in-house, but are still doing takeaway. And I was laughing to say, well, actually, here at Ananda Chennai, we're doing the same thing. we're not having in-house, but we're doing home delivery. So what we have seen is that quite unexpectedly, and with very little preparation, something has affected our lives, first of all, which is very dramatic. But that, of course, can happen at any time. When there is a crisis in the family or some kind of stress or tragedy, we see that happening to others. We pray for them. Sometimes it happens to us. Hopefully we feel or receive help from others, whether it's the loss of a family member, or loss of a job, anything, that hopefully there can be support. In fact, this is one of the great powers of community. And hopefully that's what we're tuning into and trying to feel in this strange situation of being apart. Physically anyway, only. But this is something that's happening on a planet-wide level. And normally when we think planet-wide, it's like, is it a meteor or something? I mean, what could affect the whole planet? It's really quite amazing to contemplate, but maybe we'll sort of wax philosophical about the facets of this later, meaning like 6 or 12 months from now or whatever, once it's all cleared up. But when something affects the whole world, you find everybody's consciousness changing. So, for example, suppose you are seeking spiritually, and people will laugh and say, why don't you go after money and that's what's important? Well, now some people are thinking, why don't you make sure there's enough food in the house? You see, it changes the value system dramatically. Do we have water? Are we going to have electricity? Let's just make sure the bases are covered. And of course, some people are concerned about the economy too, and perhaps rightly so. But the point is, when everybody in the world stops the way they've been used to thinking, or and starts thinking in another way, or I was going to joke, or thinking at all, because this will wake you up, wake all of us up, it creates an opportunity for us, just with ourselves. I don't mean an opportunity for us and others, an opportunity for us to take a look at our lives. I think and I hope that as you all are on the spiritual path, and I'm not speaking to some faceless crowd in a broadcast, I know each and every one of you, I hope that when you look at your life in this moment, you will be pleased. Because you have, by your actions, some of you for many years, and some of you maybe for fewer years, but what about lifetimes before this, you have been putting God, you have been giving God a front position in your lives, an exalted position. You've been placing Him first, or at least at the top, if not at the top, then near the top. But the fact that He's even in the running to be in the top is wonderful. And you did this before there was a crisis. Remember the words of Lahiri Mahashaya, if you don't invite God to be your summer guest, He won't come to you in the winter of your life. And that doesn't just have mean to do with age, but also with, if you don't share the good times with God, then He won't come during the bad times. Now what does that mean? Is it really true that God says, oh, now you call me? When there wasn't a cupcake for me at the party, but now that you have a problem with the taxes, now you're calling me. It's not that way at all. It's just that when we're open to God, then when we have the habit of opening to God, then when we're afraid, when we have a crisis, we can still open to God. Why make the distinction? Because when we have a crisis, our first instinct is to close upon ourselves. This is my fault. I did this. If only I had not done that, it would have been avoided. Or, what can I do about it? I'm all alone. No one's there to help me. All of this. And so some people's first instinct is to call on God, and if that's you, then congratulations, that's wonderful. I remember a friend of mine who was on the path, was driving with her mother, who was a very spiritual woman, and they slammed on the brakes because some car pulled out right in front of them, and they almost hit the car, and thank God they didn't. But the mother called out, Krishna! And the daughter was very impressed that in a time of crisis, her mother could shout out Krishna, because the daughter had shouted out something too, but it wasn't Krishna. And so, in the same way, sometimes we get these pop quizzes to see how we're doing. So anyway, as I say, I hope, looking at your life now, when everyone is questioning their life priorities, their values, I hope you are pleased with the choices you've made, the actions you've taken. And if you're not pleased, then be pleased. Because yes, we can always say, oh, but I should have done more of this. Remember, it's not over yet. Oh, but I could have, or oh, if only. Let all that aside. Remember what Master said to Norman, his disciple, in front of, I think if Swamiji was there. Remember this, it takes very, very, very good karma, even to want to know God. And say, okay, well then I have very, very, very good karma because I want to know God. Well, it's been more than want. You've been taking the classes, you've been learning meditation techniques that Master taught, you've been practicing them. Many of you have taken Kriya and have worked to build up your Kriya practice. Some of you are doing 108 Kriyas. Some of you have taken the higher Kriyas. I don't mean to make it like a hierarchy. I don't mean that. I just mean in terms of depth of focus, concentration, energy, output. We can always do more, or feel that we should do more than we are. I think one reason for that is that we people can make the mistake of saying, I know what I should do, and I'm not doing it, so therefore I feel badly, as if knowing what we should do is enough. And in some cases, maybe it is. If you know what to do, then do it. But in other cases, knowing is good, but it takes more than knowing. So we shouldn't feel badly if, it's not as if we're intentionally, consciously rejecting the spiritual truths, our spiritual practices. No, but we get pulled away. We get distracted. We wake up late. There's not time. This priority has to be happening and so on. And so we just get pulled into it. It's easy enough to just reset. Just say, okay, but tonight then I will do this, or in the evening do it. In other words, you can always come back to center. Don't worry about the past, even if that means an hour ago. Just start again. Another reason why I think sometimes devotees feel guilty about their sadhana, and if you don't, then just cover your ears until this part is over, is that they remember being yogis in caves. I used to meditate 10 hours a day, and now I'm struggling with half an hour. They may not have that thought consciously, but I should do more than I am doing. And it's probably true for all of us, but still, we have to remember that we're not in caves for two reasons. One is God wants this teaching brought into the world. And if we were all in caves, we would be having a very good time, especially if our caves were near to one another. But what about the rest of the world? And frankly, how would any of us have been on this path now if the ones who came before us were all in caves? You see? I was not running around caves trying to find other devotees and say, I didn't have any instinct that I should be going to a cave. If someone said, hey, here's a cave, I would have said, well, go enjoy. I would head off to, a movie theater or something. So the other reason why that that it's harder and we're not in caves now is because, frankly, if caves would have done it, we would not have had to come back. If being in a cave all isolated was the perfect thing for us to the end, we would have reached the end and we would not be having this conversation. So we are here to learn a balance to the cave life. And so that's good too. A balance does not mean balance cave life with Maya. It means live for God in the cave, now live for God in the world. Serve God through sadhana primarily, and if not only, versus serving God through our family, through our responsibilities and so on, and also meditating. Okay, so it's not that that's out of it. But whereas we could reasonably be asked to meditate 8 hours a day every day if we were in the cave, or in the monastery, which again, I think many of us were in monasteries too, or wandering by the river. Master even said that if he was walking with one saint hand in hand, and if he had been with him even a half an hour longer, he could have never brought himself to leave India. And in America, we heard that and thought, oh, thank God he left the saint. And in India, they may have said, darn, too bad, half an hour longer, and then he would have stayed. But it had to be the way it was, because he had to meet Swamiji, or Swamiji had to meet him rather, and for all of this to take the sequence that it has taken for each of us. Now, sometimes I think one reason why we feel we should be meditating more is because we should be. So at a certain point, we do have to just put out the willpower to do a little bit more. That's all, just a little bit more. For example, if you didn't meditate in the evening, meditate in the evening even for 2 minutes. Because 2 minutes will become 4, which will become 15. It's so amazing to me that whenever I get pulled off my sadhana routine, that it just takes one attempt to get back into it. And I mean my schedule, because I'm always putting in the time one way or another, but it can get frantic or frenetic or fractured. But the regularity, the same time and all this, because times of busyness affect all of us. One good meditation at the right time is enough to reset everything because of all that has come before it. In other words, if you think, I used to meditate well and now I don't, you just have to do it once. And you'll find all of those past hours, weeks, years, you sort of reconnect with them, and all that strength comes back. But when we're not in that space, it seems impossible. And Swamiji said this in another context about writing music. He said, when I'm not writing music, I don't know how I ever have done it. I just can't even conceive of how my mind could have put together all these things. And it's just amazing to me. But when he was writing music from a superconscious place, it's easy, it's effortless. He would just write it down, just as fast as he was hearing it in his mind. Amazing. So meditation really helps us to lift our consciousness, and from that we can see even ourselves in a better light, in a better perspective. So it really is something that Swamiji encouraged us. Meditate 90 minutes a day as a Kriyaban, as a baseline. He said, really, you should be meditating 3 hours a day. And it's actually not too hard to build up to. Attend the meditation tomorrow, that's something. That's 3 hours right there, 6 to 9. If you do, the meditation in the morning here, which you can do now just with a click of your phone or your computer, then you just need to do a little bit midday, and already you're at 2 hours, an hour and a half plus a half hour. Yes, energization's in there, and okay, so we can argue about the math later. But the point is, sometimes we do have to say, this is what I stand for, this is what I live for, to ourselves even, gently but firmly. There's no point in criticizing ourselves, as if nothing else, it gives us an excuse to keep on not doing it. I know I'm not doing it, but I feel badly about it, so doesn't that count? It doesn't count. Sorry. Guilt counts for nothing. In fact, in another context, Swamiji said to somebody who said, sir, somebody so-and-so is feeling guilt about something. Swamiji said, if there's one word I would like to eliminate from our vocabulary, it would be the word guilt. There's just no need to feel that way. Of course we're not perfect, and we're here to become perfect. We're here to work on all these things. So there will be setbacks, there will be learning. That's what we're doing, is learning. And so in that line, I wanted to continue. I do wish I could see your faces, and maybe we'll do that a little bit later, because I do miss the smiles. At this point, I can't tell if the faces on the other side of the screen are wreathed in smiles or masks of horror. Just like, what is this class anyway that I signed up for? Listen, you're all doing very well. I'm not even thinking of each of you individually. But meaning when I was saying these things, I wasn't trying to give a message. You all are doing very well, and we're just so thrilled. And yet, let's see how we can build upon that. Why? So that we can measure up? No, because there's so much joy in it. You see? Okay, so I would like to talk a little bit about this class that we're going to do in the next 4 weeks, and beginning now. And then I'd like to ask for a few questions related to what I said or something else. And so be ready, because I may even just call your name out. And so I probably won't, but I will ask for questions. When we face a title of a class or a topic, going deeper on the spiritual path, we have to ask ourselves, well, what is the spiritual path? It's one thing to go deeper on it, but it doesn't hurt to start from the beginning. What is the spiritual path to? What is the purpose of it? The purpose of the spiritual path is to find God, is to become one with God. Sure, fine. What does that mean? For one thing, it means that we are graduated from this plane of existence. So once we find God, we are out of the school. We are not subject to the exams. We get to walk among the sort of halls of anything in the streets as free men and women, free souls, because the same laws do not apply to us. Okay, but what does that even really mean? Because so far it's pretty abstract. Obviously it implies something better. If we said once you graduate, then the existence is much worse. No, it's better. Why? But why is it better? Because the scriptures say, because the masters who come say that this is what you should seek? No, it is because it gives so much joy. It's because it gives us a greater joy than we've ever experienced And on the other hand, it gives us a joy that is in our own being, and we are instinctively, everyone is instinctively seeking. I know so many of you have told me, and it's been touching to hear, directly or indirectly in the stories of how you came to this path, that I knew there had to be more joy in life than this. I knew there had to be more happiness than what I was experiencing. Someone the other day was telling me how they were sort of involved with another spiritual group before Ananda, and they could just feel something wasn't right. Why? Maybe something was right or not right, I don't know, but it wasn't right for that person. And the person instinctively felt, there's more that I should be getting, and there's more I can be getting. Let me try somewhere else. And the next place, Ananda, turned out to be that person's home. So, that instinctive thing for the devotee, or it becomes more intuitive for the devotee, because we're even aware of this feeling, and may even get messages and guidance to join a certain place, or to carry on. And that guidance keeps on coming. And you hear Master's voice more and more, whether literally or whether you get that silent whisper in your soul, but you hear it. Do this, don't do this, and so on. But we are here to find God, to find joy, and it's something that we are made of. So it's really a return, as I was saying in another context, home. It's a return home. Now, what does it take to find God? What's the problem? Why is it even a job at all? If it's to return home, why don't we just go home? Excuse me, especially if that's where we came from. Why not just make a U-turn and whatever it is, Tirumbaponga or something like that. Now, the challenge that we find to uplifting our energy, which we learn, in order to find God, all the energy of the body, energy of the astral body, the energy of the causal body, whatever it is, has to be offered up the spine and united here at this point. And that is how we free ourselves from our lower level of consciousness. That's how we attain samadhi. That's how we attain higher awareness, is when this energy is offered up. Okay, well, let's do it then. Ready? Okay, first let's sit up straight. No, I'm kidding. I wish it were that easy. It just doesn't work like that. We try. It would be nice if, like Ramakrishna, all Totapuri had to do was stick a piece of glass, don't try this at home, in the forehead of Ramakrishna, and Ramakrishna went into ecstasy, and he was freed. Now, Totapuri did comment that you did in 3 days what it took me 40 years to accomplish. And you think, my gosh, wow. And it is wow. At the same time, when you reflect that Totapuri lived, over 380 years or whatever, 40 years to him was really not the same as 40 years to us. But still, it's a long time. And so, we want to lift our energy up, the spine, but the spine, the flow of energy, if you think of the spine as a tube, the tube is blocked. The tube is clogged with seeds of karma, is really what they are. It's trapped energy. Another way to think of it is if you were trying to push water up the spine, if the energy were water, there is already frozen blocks of ice in the spine, meaning it's made out of the same substance, water. Frozen water, maybe I'll change the image, in a river, because you say, frozen water in my spine? No wonder I'm cold, and not in Chennai. But anyway, think of a river. The water flow can't go in a river because if the river is frozen. And again, imagine there could be such a thing as a frozen river. That there is just solid. And so there's water trying to maybe trickle, but it can't. But it's not blocked with rocks. It's made of the same substance, water. That water is committed. It is frozen and stuck. And so it can't be part of the overall flowing power that the river would have otherwise. That's exactly what's happening in our spine. We have little commitments of energy. And this is seeds of karma. It is, you could say, potential energy that's already been committed. and allocated. Another way to think of it is in terms of money, that we have promised this money to this activity and that in a budget, and that money is allocated to that budget. And even though the money is there, we can't use it because it's already claimed. And saddest part is we are the ones who claimed it for that thing. It's not even that anyone else will get mad, it's that we did the allocating. And so our liquid capital is not available. And so in the same way, our energy is committed. That's what a seed of karma really is. It's committed energy. You don't have to think of it as past actions. Oh, that when I threw a brick at someone in Cairo 3,000 years ago, I really wish I hadn't. But the pyramids were there. What are you going to do? You have to throw a brick. I mean, don't think of it in terms of past actions and past karma and punishment and all that. Just think of it as commitments of energy. And in fact, one man who was a friend of Swamiji's, his name was Indu Ban, and in fact he and his mother, Rani Ban, were good friends of Swamiji's in the early years of Swamiji's time in India and beyond, all the way through Swamiji's lifetime. Indu is still alive even now. Anyway, Indu told Swamiji how he found his guru, his own guru. Indu went to many different saints and asked them, what is the purpose of life? And they all gave answers. Some gave him very short answers. Some gave them long, intellectual answers. None of the answers he was satisfied with. Then he came to one man, Nayaswami, who Swami Kriyananda has written about in his book, Visits to Saints in India. And Indu asked Nayaswami, what is the purpose of life? And Nayaswami said, to close all your accounts and not open any new ones. And Indu liked this very well. Indu was, I think he was a Supreme Court judge of India. He was very successful in his own career, so a very thoughtful person, but he liked this answer and he followed Nayaswami, who was an amazing man. You might want to read about him in that book if you haven't. In any case, that's what we're trying to do, is free this trapped energy, free up this karma. Now, how does that happen? Well, how did the energy get trapped in the first place? Why did we choose to allocate some of the budget to this item or give some of the money to this budget? Why did the water in the river freeze? It was because of desire. You see, we said, I want that, and I don't have it yet. And then we see this and say, I don't want that, I really hope that doesn't happen. You see, it's desire. Whether we acted on that desire, I desired to throw the brick at that person and I just couldn't help it. Score! Or whether we thought about it. If I had a brick, and you see, whether we acted on it or even just desired it, there's still karma generated. In fact, the strength of a karmic seed is increased the greater the desire behind even an action. So if you act and it creates karma, yes, karma means action and all that, the strength of karma from a particular action depends on the desire, the amount of willpower we put behind that action, not just the action itself. Whereas if we turned and bumped someone with our hand accidentally, not even realizing we're there, we hit them. But we said, oh, I'm so sorry and all that. But even if we didn't, if they were in a crowd and we couldn't even say sorry, because you might say, well, if you said you're sorry, it helps. It does, actually. But still, if we just went like this in a crowd and couldn't even say sorry, versus if we saw the person, hey, there they are, that generates much more karma. And so you would say, well, I don't hit people in crowds, and good, but how much of the time do we go with strong desire? Or, you see, too much, I have to have it. One little girl, I was shopping with her and her mom was saying, you get one item in the store. Trying to find ways to minimize the screaming and the crazy emotional fits when they would go through a supermarket full of dangling toys and shiny things. And so she told her daughters, you get one item, and once you've picked the item, that's it. Because she had learned that, no, I want that, and then I changed this, oh, but it's back in aisle 2, and so one item. And so, but the girl was very clever, and she said, Mommy, I'm trying not to want the second toy, but I can't help it. And I thought, it's just so clear how, the human nature is. She was just being honest. How many things that we desire, we just can't help it. In fact, sometimes it's better if it's safe or harmless enough to just go and do it. Someone said, Swamiji, what if I'm desiring ice cream and I'm just trying to give up that desire while they're sweating and so on? Swamiji said, just go and have the ice cream. He said, we learn more from having our desires fulfilled than denied. And so if you have the ice cream and then go, all that excitement for this or the first taste, but then after that it's just like any other thing. Or if we get sick, or if we go there and there is no ice cream, sometimes we learn something like, what was I so excited about? So you can learn that way, but it takes a long time if we do it just that way. So, these seeds of karma that are blocking the flow of energy in the spine and therefore preventing us from finding God yet are generated by desires. That is the reason why not to have desires, why to overcome our desires on the spiritual path. Not because there's anything morally wrong with having desires, not because it's spiritually sinful to have desires. And how often do people take that approach? Do not have desires? Why? The Gita says so. Why does it say so? Because it says so. And I'm more spiritual than you, because not only do I not have desires, but I know the Gita says so. And here, I will quote it to you in Sanskrit backwards. No. You see, we need to understand that it is practical to minimize our desires. Forget everything I've just said, just the frustration of having a desire that is yet unfulfilled. Remember, a worry and a fear are a desire too. I don't want that to happen. What if that happens? I don't want it. So, fear too, we have to work with calming. Now, we want to overcome our desires so that this energy can flow. Now, it would be pretty bleak, however, because you may sense a certain flaw in this argument, which is that in order to find God, we have to overcome all of our desires. Thank God the answer is no, that's not the first step, because it's impossible. As many desires as we're overcoming, we're generating more. Even to desire, to get rid of desires is a desire. It's a desireless desire. It's, as it says in the scriptures, it's having desires is like having different thorns stuck in your flesh. And the desire for God is another thorn. It's a desire. But with that thorn, you can pull out all the rest of these thorns. And then pull the one out, they say, and then throw both thorns away. Throw out the master thorn too. And by the way, you could ask, well, does good karma block our spine? And is there a way for me to just get rid of the bad karma but keep all the good karma? You don't have to worry about that. Good karma presents no obstacle at all. Because good karma, by the way, is that which pushes us towards God. You might even say, what's good karma? It's God karma. It's karma that takes you to God. It's not necessarily what takes you to comfort, if such comfort would make us forget God, or make us feel very powerful. See what I have accomplished. See what I can control with my money, with my power, and all these things. That actually can be harmful to us, as has been seen. It looks tempting at first, and sure, it would be nice even in times of crisis to imagine how could we provide for ourselves more materially, and then be safe. But our safety is in God. Practical measures too, certainly, but also in God. Now, as this is the goal of the spiritual path to overcome desires, but it's very hard to get rid of all our past desires because we're creating new ones, the first step then is to stop creating new ones. And the way to do that is not to say, I desire nothing, because it doesn't work. Even, I desire to desire nothing. So you just can't get around it. The thing to get rid of I desire is not to try to get rid of the desire, but to try to get rid of the I. Get rid of the ego. The ego is what is generating the desires. These desires are also called vrittis. The ego is the vritti amma. It is the amma of all the vrittis. It is the source of the problem. And Master told a rather strange story as an illustration. He said 2 boys were not talking and not wanting to go to school, and the one boy said, "If only we pray that the teacher dies," and forgive me to all teachers right now, but anyway, too bad, that's the way the story goes. The boy said, "If we only pray that the teacher dies, then we won't have to go to school." And the other boy, Master said, was more intelligent. He said, "No, because if the teacher dies, Papa will get another. But if we pray that the Papa dies, then we won't have to go to school." Okay, there it is. It's Master's story. Don't personalize it. But Master said that Papa is karma. In other words, in that context, he was saying karma is the source of our problems. But what is the source of karma? What is the karma's Papa? Karma udu Papa. Yara? Ahankar. Ego. Okay? And so I'm not hearing you all laugh at my Tamil. Anytime I say something in Tamil, there's always laughter. I'm not getting it. It makes me, Once I said something in Tamil to Prasanna. I said, "Bed kira paaka mudiyuma?" And he looked like this, and I said, "Did you understand me?" He said, "Yeah, I was just, looking what were you pointing out under the bed." And so I said, "Oh, see, when you don't laugh, I think I've said it wrong." Because that's, anyway, never mind. Forgive me. I like to digress, but it feels a little more foolish when just talking to the camera like this. So the thing is then that our goal should be to overcome the ego. Okay, that's step 1. If ever somebody says to you, "What is the goal of the spiritual path?" Say, "Find God." I mean, in general, for anything. If they say, "What is the goal? What is the purpose?" Say, "Find God." And we were talking about this once in a class, and then someone was saying, "Why were you late for the train?" "To find God?" Is the answer to everything. No, not quite. But to any reason that we do anything should be to find God. It's interesting when we look at our lives with that stethoscope, or that, what is this? Not a stethoscope, magnifying glass. Stethoscope, I guess, when we listen to our lives, listen to our heart's desires. Anyway, microscope, I guess that's what I meant. But how do we find God? This is the question the yogi asks, you see. It's not just, find God, fine, yeppity. We find God by overcoming the ego. And then the yogi who's on a roll says, the yeppity. You see? Or what is it? I think I'm going to quit while I'm already so far gone. How do we do that? And we say, we meditate. We say, yeppity at level 1, level 2, and then that we can end it there. So, we are, in our meditation, we are overcoming the ego. And so let me explain, let me share something that Swamiji wrote on how this is achieved, looking at it from the other end of the spectrum, when we're nearly finished. Swamiji writes in The New Path, "Liberation from ego does not come with the first glimpses of cosmic consciousness." So we're talking about a soul that's already made it into having glimpses of cosmic consciousness, which we would hope that the first time you see it, that's it. Not quite. Present at first, even in an expanded state of awareness, is the subtle memory, I, the formless, but nevertheless still real, John Smith, am enjoying this expanded state of consciousness. The body is immobile in this trance state. One's absorption in God at this point is called Sabikalpa Samadhi, or qualified absorption, a condition still subject to change, for on one's return from this lower samadhi, one assumes once again the limitations of ego. So now we're understanding what happens when we're almost there, and then we will see how that applies to where we are now. Swamiji continues. This is from chapter 32 in The New Path. By repeated absorption in this trance state, however, the ego's hold on all its self-definitions is gradually broken, and finally the realization dawns, there is no John Smith to go back to. I am spirit. This is the supreme state, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, or unqualified absorption, a condition changeless and eternal. If from this state one returns to body consciousness, he does so no longer with the consciousness of being separate or different from the ocean of spirit. John Smith no longer exists. It is the eternal spirit now which animates his body, eats through it, teaches through it, and carries on all the normal functions of a human being. This outward direction of energy on the part of one who has attained Nirvikalpa Samadhi is sometimes known also as Sahaja, or Effortless Samadhi. And so this is the one key thought I wanted to bring out. By repeated absorption in the trance state, however, the ego's hold on all its self-definitions is gradually broken. And you see, that's what we are looking at every time we meditate. Every time we meditate, we loosen the hold the ego has on our consciousness. We loosen the gripping sort of identity that I am this person after all. And that's why, for one thing, that when we practice the non-attachment, even to the body, this is one of the yamas, aparigraha, I think it is, that when we have not, it's sometimes translated as non-acceptance of gifts, but it really means non-attachment. Not even attached to the things that belong to you, what to speak of something else, because the other is, not desiring things that other people have, but not even desiring what you have. As that detachment grows, first of all, you become more responsible for things, not less responsible, but also, meaning your possessions and people in your life. It isn't that you just abandon them, but also you start to remember your past lives, because you're not, and that's what Patanjali says, which, if you translate aparigraha as, not accepting of gifts, it doesn't make any sense. Don't accept gifts and you'll remember past lives. Happy birthday to Vandam, I want to remember my past life. It doesn't make any sense. But not attached to this life so much starts to expand your awareness, to start to remember, okay. If not literally, I remember walking around in, Tiruvannamalai, and it looked more or less like it does now, except with no TVs. No, it's not that necessarily vivid, but you remember, you come to a place, I feel like I've been here before. I've always been pleased how Sai Ram said he loved going to Canada. Just so you know, Canada is cold, very cold. Think of a place that's the opposite of Chennai, that's Canada. And he said, I felt so at home. And he said, and the people there liked me too, and I liked them. There was something about it. And I wanted to say, what about America? Did you like America too? No, I'm joking. But many of you must have had that experience. It's especially fun if you've traveled. Instinctively you will like a place, or instinctively feel uncomfortable in the place. And I've had that experience too, and I think it's just because I thought, I hated that life here, that recent life, because we probably lived 1,000 times in every country, what to speak of other planets. But I digress. So, this is the goal of the spiritual path, overcome the ego. How? One way to do it is to meditate. But no matter what, it should be with that purpose. Anything we do should be with the purpose to overcome the ego, because that is the shortcut out of this mess. And Nirvikalpa Samadhi is not eventually. It is not a higher state, though it is. But it's not a higher state that's just for the great ones. When Master said, you should strive to become a Jivan Mukta in this lifetime, he was saying Nirvikalpa Samadhi. It's the same thing. To be a Jivan Mukta, you have to enter into Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Nirvikalpa, Sabikalpa ila. It is insufficient. Why? Because you fall from Sabikalpa. Nirvikalpa, you don't fall. And that's what we want, graduation, as I was saying earlier. To become a Jivan Mukta is to become a graduate. Then you operate on another level of existence. And Master said, strive for that in this lifetime, which means strive for Nirvikalpa Samadhi in this lifetime. Sister Gyanamata, at the end of her life, Master said, anything you want, ask me, I'll give you. She said, Nirvikalpa Samadhi. He said, you already have that. Wow. I mean, how could you have Nirvikalpa Samadhi and not know it? The teaching is not, well then maybe I have it too. That's not the teaching, I'm afraid. But Swamiji told Master told Swamiji that he would, one of the laughs got through the internet or something. Swamiji was told by Master that he would find God at the end of life. What does it mean? Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Look at his picture. Look at his picture if you have it around your house. That's someone who either at the time of that photo was in Nirvikalpa Samadhi or days away from it. So you know someone, you could say in that sense, well. In addition to Master, now Master he was not a Jivan Mukta, he was a Param Mukta, he was beyond that even, but still. So let us have that as a goal. And when we hear Nirvikalpa Samadhi, say, well, not for me. No. Me? No. Stop it. Why not you? It's a good sign even to deny it because it shows your humility. It's much better to say not me than me, definitely. But still, Master said in this lifetime, if we are focused on the path with Kriya, of course even without it, but also with it. So get Kriya if you don't have it. Now, this is our goal, to overcome the ego. And so if we want to go deeper on the spiritual path, then we need to think about, in addition to our meditation, what else can we do to overcome the ego? What else will help us to overcome the ego? Because we can't meditate the whole day effectively. Even if there is plenty of money, even if someone is sliding dosas under the door of our cave, still, we couldn't have effective meditation, most of us, for 22 hours a day, like Ram Gopal Muzumdar. No, it was 18 hours a day for 22 years anyway. Whatever he did, it was staggering. And actually, he was a Paramukta already too. So anyway, lots to think about. But we should think of that as an inspiration that, okay, if he can do that, then I can at least get to stage 1, Jivan Mukta, to be a Jivan Mukta, rather than, oh my gosh. These great ones don't come to show off. They don't come because they're feeling kind of badly compared to all the other Paramuktas running around, a dime a dozen. Let's go down to earth, and then we can really, get some fans, because we're impressive compared to those fools. No, they come to help us fools. They say, listen, I was once like you. And that is in some way the greatest proof that the realization of God brings joy, is because as soon as they have that joy, so many want to share it with others. You see? If it just brought peace, maybe we would say, peace. And just enjoy for ourselves. If it just brought power, we might say, I think I'll create a galaxy today. Which Master said the great yogis can do. Wow. And yet, for many people, when they feel joy, their natural instinct is to share it with others. I found this wonderful restaurant. Actually, don't go right now because they're about to be closed by the government. But when it opens again, I'm joking. Sorry, forgive me, coronavirus joke. But, all these things. I found this great hand sanitizer. Gosh, what a world we live in right now. You see, a wonderful brand of mask, gloves. Anyway, a lot of us are enjoying our seclusion. I'm sorry if you're not. At least this is something we can do to pass the time in between. But we naturally want to share. We had a very sweet story. I probably shouldn't just say it so, publicly, but we're all friends and in the same family here. Somebody told, I'll leave the names out of it. Somebody asked, there were 3 people, A, B, and C, because I can't. So A says to B and C, I want to find a meditation place. And B says, my wife is involved with some meditation place, maybe we can go there. And then C said, I've been to a lot of meditation places, but there's one I want to try. I've heard it's fantastic. It's called Ananda Sangha. It's in CIT Nagar. And so B laughed and said, that's the one that my wife is going to. And, that's where... So it was sweet for me to hear that the word of, for example, Ananda is spreading. But that's not my point, because it's a rather self-congratulatory story to all of us. Just good job, everyone. Excellent. But it is really good job to everyone here behind me. But really, it was because that person who wanted to go, he said, my wife, is involved, but I too want to get involved. And it was sort of the push that he needed. But there was that sense of, this is a good thing. Let's share in it together. So that is what joy often does. It just wants to spill over and express itself, but also to share in that, to bring happiness to others. It's contagious in a good way. So, I think what I'd like to do now, and leave us with this thought, we need to overcome the ego. We do it through meditation. What else can we do to overcome the ego? To find God. That's the point. I want to stop and I want to open it up for questions or comments. Okay, how do we keep our heart open during the day, at office, and so on? Thank you. I'm really glad you asked that question, and you'll have to forgive me for a bit of a cop-out. That is the purpose of everything else I'm about to say. That's the question I'm trying to answer through the rest of today's class and the classes to follow. Because what do we do when we're not meditating? I'm going to pick it up by a particular theme. But even what you said, in a certain way, the answer is implied in your question. What to do is what we're going to say. But you pointed out something very crucial. In order to overcome the ego, we have to keep our hearts open. I didn't say anything about that. And we absolutely need to. This is one easy way to overcome the ego, is to try to find a way to keep the heart open. Because when our heart is open, we include others in our reality. We include others in our thoughts. We include the happiness of others in our happiness. Because one of the greatest threats to the ego usually is other egos. Mine. I remember this, I was in a university sort of symposium on anthropology, and it was a small class, and the professor just sat at a table, and we all sat in a circle, a round table. It was, again, a very small class, cultural anthropology. And he was saying that in some cultures, they don't even have the concept of possession. And isn't it funny that as Americans, is he who was saying, but it really goes pretty far on this, most civilized societies, we do have this sense of this belongs to me. But he said in some of the tribes even I've lived among, they don't have a sense of this is a personal possession, it just belongs to everybody. And he had a pen that he was holding in his hand, and I rather brazenly, leaping in where angels dare not tread, started to take the pen out of his hand. I don't know why I didn't think he would flunk me right then, because I was trying to make a point. And so I started to pull on the pen, and he grabbed it, and he looked at me, and he was still talking, and he yanked it away. And I was trying to see that, because you think of this pen as yours, and anyway, I think the point was lost on him. But still, it's just such a deep thing that, hey, this is mine, get away from me. No, well, you can have yours as long as I get mine. I'm happy for everyone else too, but I have to come first. All these things. When we shrink, when our hearts close. Or when our hearts are open, we are trying to think of how to bring joy to others, and it relieves us from having to think about ourselves all the time. That's why service is such a useful way to overcome the ego and open the heart. But really, he's asking how, and so I will continue, but I wanted to bring out that point that he made. Okay. Next question. Yeah. No, I think in one way, what a question related to what you're asking is essentially, is there a way to know whether we should satisfy this desire because that will get it out of our system, or should we give up this desire because it will lead to too much complexity and we just don't need the hassle?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, very good. Yeah. It's a very good question. You see, unfortunately, and it's a very crucial question that we have to keep track of in our lives, that should I satisfy this desire and get it out of my system, or should I not? You see, I was making the case very strongly for the ice cream, not necessarily for all desires, that just go, as Swamiji said, it's a harmless thing, go and get rid of it, even for food. Swamiji told Master, help me, sir, to overcome my desire for good food, my liking for good food. And Master said to Swamiji, never mind the little things. He called that a little thing. He said, when ecstasy comes, everything goes. Because you taste in ecstasy something infinitely better than the best rasam in the world. Even the best idli, I know it's hard to believe, but the best idli could not compare to cosmic consciousness. And so Therefore, some desires will go away automatically. Some, if they're just too distracting, enjoy it a little, but with the awareness of how can I be free from this? Not just ice cream, ice cream, ice cream. I'm getting freer, you know. Ice cream, ice cream, ice cream, ice cream. And then you can't meditate because you have a cold. So, a little bit. But I was making the point strongly, but unfortunately, whenever you say anything, it's true that the equal and opposite point can also be made and be very valid. On the one hand, you could say the spiritual path is full of contradictions. And on the other hand, you could say it has many facets, many angles. And really what matters is which angle do we need individually to do more of. I spend so much time denying my desires, this is not most people's problem, that let me indulge them a little bit to not be so tense. The other is, what do you mean? Is there anything to do with desires but indulge them? And then it's time to hold back a little bit. I'm not speaking to you, Karthika, of course, but just in general. So one way to learn with this particular desire, should I do it or not, is to try it. Then we find very quickly from experience, whoops. As a friend of mine said when he was getting involved in two other friends' arguments, and I was patiently trying to ask him not to get involved, because though they both had guns aimed at each other, metaphorically speaking, it would be the work of a moment to turn and aim them at him. But he found out after this was aimed at him, and he said, I learned, that is fire, don't touch. And I thought it was very sweet the way he put it, because he spoke as one who knows, one who has been through it. So usually, again, if you can do it a little bit, go a few steps in that direction, whoa, actually I don't want this at all. So then that learning applies to other situations. Meaning it helps you then, oh, you know what, this reminds me of the fire thing, not to touch, I'm not going to touch this either. But intuition, prayer can also help, because it's, should I get this degree or that degree? Well, you know, you can't just get half a degree and then learn. It's better if you can get a sense for it through intuition and so on. Someone told me when I was trying to decide on which graduate school to go to, because I had many choices, fortunately, they said decide, but then, and even like write it down, but don't send it in, don't mail it in, meaning don't commit yourself yet, because you had to mail a little matriculation card, yes, I'm coming. And so I decided, but then I didn't send it in, and then mail it yet, and then throughout that whole week I kept getting messages from another school. Literally emails, but also there was just all this positive energy coming from the one I had said I definitely don't want to go to, and I definitely want to go to the one that I had chosen. And in the course of that week, I ended up changing my mind and went to the other one. And so it was very helpful to just decide, but then wait and see before I was fully caught up in it. But that's just if that works in your situation, fine. Remember what Master said, desires ever fed are never dead. And sometimes Swamiji would put it, desires ever fed are never satisfied. They never end. And so we don't want to just keep on after the desires, because that's the quickest way to get another desire, is just feed the one that you have. So that is the other side of it. As I said, you can't make one statement without, if the other point of view is brought up, yes, that's true too. Okay? All right. Next question. That's a good question, and why didn't I speak of good karma or bad karma? Swamiji points out the saints don't speak of good karma or bad karma. They just say karma. You see? All karma is binding on us. And so in a way, all karma is a problem, because it's just separating us from God. And if you have somebody you dearly love, think of it as your relative, your mother or your child, or somebody who you're now separated from, because they've left this world, and you could see them again in an easy, harmless way. You just want to get through the door. Get out of my way. I want that reunion. If that doesn't make sense, think about Master. Master right around the corner. We just have to walk through the door. We'd say, out of my way. And whatever's in the way, you just brush aside. I've had this experience. Someone was trying to bring Swamiji tea, and I guess I was unconsciously standing in the way. And the person just trod on my foot so hard. And I said, excuse me, because it was someone I knew well, and looked at them like, could I at least have like a tiny acknowledgement that, sorry about your broken foot, but I have tea. Nothing. I saw the person. They were just drawn to Swamiji. They had no idea there was a crushed foot under theirs. And at first I was kind of hurt because I took it personally, like, you didn't even notice me. And then I realized, look, the person is so devoted to Swamiji that they have eyes only for him, and he wanted the tea and they don't want to delay his tea even 1 second to, wipe the blood off their foot and so on. No, I'm joking. It wasn't that bad. And so I was inspired by that once I broadened my perspective. So anyway, as I said, karma is karma. It's just in the way of us getting to God. But you don't have to worry about, is this desire generating good karma or is it generating bad karma? I mean, yes, if you're on that level, meaning not you, I don't mean if you're on that level spiritually. I mean, if that's our level of discussion, sure, it is worth looking at. But the main thing is, does this lead me to more freedom or less freedom? You see? We might say, and you have to think about it, because we say, if only I had so much more money, I would have so much more freedom. You know the problem when you have so much more money is you worry about losing it. And you buy all these nice things, and then you know what? Then you have to install security cameras and electric fences and, hire guards for the bedroom and so on. Because before, nobody wanted your stuff. Who wants these sheets and a carpet? But now, I would like that, and I'd like that too. And we start to worry. Someone comes into the house to repair something, and I'm not saying it against them. I'm just saying, see, we've created headaches for ourselves. So it's not necessarily more freedom. If we're detached, it is freedom. It doesn't matter what you have. So look for what will bring me more freedom, what will bring me more joy. And as you meditate, you will feel more in God, and you'll have a sense for which of these desires should I follow. But we should be truthful about our desires. Don't deny them. Don't pretend, no, I don't have them. It's not spiritual. One of the first steps on the spiritual path is truthfulness, above all with ourselves. I'm not saying this, Venkatesh, to you specifically. I'm just saying it generally. Okay? So, very nice to have your question and to see you three. I hope others will, if not today, at other times, be brave and join in the conversation like this. Because it's nice. It gives us all more of a sense of feeling like we really are here together. So what I'd like to do next is I'd like us to watch a short video clip of Swami Kriyananda speaking about something very important. Not just yet. I mean, don't hide me yet. But the thing is that one way to overcome the ego, or let me put it differently. Meditation is one way. What do we do to overcome the ego besides meditation, especially when meditation represents such a small portion of time out of our day? This is what the rest of the spiritual path addresses itself to. Our attitudes, our behaviors, the way we interact with others, the way we introspect on ourselves, all of these things, the questions that our three friends just raised are all, again, what do I do in my waking time? What do I do in this particular practical situation as it will help me overcome the ego to find God? And this, on a one level, you could say this is what the, well, let me put it differently, because I'm trying to make a bridge here. So, just to come to the punchline, this is really the purpose of the spiritual path, which is achieved also by attitudes of detachment, as I was saying, achieved through detachment. And one of the easiest ways to get through detachment is to pursue a path of renunciation. So there it is, the big word, renunciation. I held off as long as I could. Renunciation, the reason you say, why hold off? Because why not even call this class renunciation? Because then everybody would just renounce the class and maybe not even come. The problem with this word, renunciation, or any words related to it, sannyas or brahmacharya or any of these things, is that we have, especially in India, too much of an association with that word with a particular outer form. Sannyas means orange. Swami means orange. Renunciation means monk. Unfortunately, we've had sort of a strange thing that has come out of our Level 3 Part 1 classes. We've been showing people the answer during the Level 3 Part 1 classes, which for many of you didn't have, only because we didn't have the answer. We didn't have the movie. But now that we do, it's fun to show it to people who have read so many of these stories in the Handbook for Discipleship and then see them on the silver screen. But one of the challenges that I didn't anticipate but came up in this last batch of disciples, someone said, because I call each of the disciples, the students, before they take the vow to ask if they have any questions they want to ask in private. And not a few said to me, I'd like to have discipleship, but I have one doubt. And I said, yes, what's that? One said, I'd also like to have children. And I said, yeah. That's not a problem. And then someone else said, if I take discipleship, do I have to quit my job? I said, no, please don't quit your job. They didn't say, and then can I just come live at the ashram? But it's just, I said, where is this coming from? This is not entering a monastic life just to become a disciple. I don't mean just. I mean, discipleship is in many ways much more important than having a monastic life. But the two are separated, and then I began to wonder, is it from the Answer movie? Because when Master meets Swamiji, a lot of the questions are also not just about discipleship, but about Swamiji becoming a monk. And Swamiji, even in contemplating this, is asking himself the questions that a prospective monk might ask. But that is not discipleship, as of course all of you know. But the point is that we ourselves, if you are concerned, I lead a householder life, so I can't be a renunciate. If you are concerned, I wish, if only I had known I am so spiritual, I wouldn't have gotten into this whole worldly life in the first place. I've heard that expressed, thankfully, not by anybody here, but in other places that I've lived. It's a silly thing to think. God knew you before you knew about God. And God knew what you were going to choose, whatever year you chose, in terms of Kriya and the rest of it. And God had you on the right path this whole time. Now, if you think, gosh, I don't want to be a renunciate even, so why do we even have to talk about it? I'm sorry, my friends, it's too late. You already are a renunciate. It happened when you weren't looking. Because to be a renunciate means you could say, I renounce the world in favor of God. A better way to put it, a more positive way, is I choose God over the world. Do you see what I mean? Would any of you argue, no, I don't choose God over the world? The most you could say, well, I choose God and the world? Fine. Still, there's God in there, as I was saying to you in the beginning. At least God is, if not at the top, in the running to be at the top. At least we can even say the word God and really even feel something, hopefully. What you feel is not necessarily anything about the word, but about any way your life has been touched by God in any way. And that, once you've felt it, you get hooked. We get addicted. That is such a deeply satisfying experience. We want more and more. Peace in meditation. Anger dissolving automatically. Just because I meditated, I'm calmer. I don't have to work not to react to something negative. I don't have to work not to desire at least a snappy comeback. It's that I just didn't even feel that way. It didn't occur to me because I felt so calm. This is great stuff. And so all of these experiences are of God, and we start to seek them. And seeking them at all means we are renunciates. In that sense of the word, meaning I want to uplift or sort of lighten that word of any kind of baggage. So if you're on the spiritual path, if you're a truth seeker, and yes, if you are a disciple, then you are a renunciate in the true sense of the word, because you are saying, I don't seek my happiness in this world. I seek it in God. And if you say, well, I do seek it in this world because I do have these desires yet I want to fulfill, then say, I don't seek it in this world only. I seek it also in God, and I want to seek it more and more in God. And go ahead and fulfill some of those desires and see what they give you. Sometimes you learn good skills that then you can put to use for God later on. Or you just learn something and the act of learning helps you to expand your awareness. No activity you engage in is inherently wrong or unspiritual. It's just the attitude with which we do it. Some activities naturally pull the mind down unless we're very careful. This Nayaswami drained a whole bottle of whiskey in front of somebody and was perfectly lucid and not drunk at all, just to demonstrate how it wouldn't affect him. Again, don't try this at home. But the other thing to remember is that if you're on the path, you are choosing God. So when we think of the word renunciation, even the word isn't such a good word, because renounce tends to mean renounce what? Well, I don't do that. I don't want that. Fine. So what do you want? You see, that's why devotee, truth seeker, these are very good words for who we are on the path. But renunciation is implied and included, and you're already doing it. You're watching this instead of NDTV or whatever else you could be watching. We're in it together. You see? So you're already in, this word already applies to you, and it's a natural part of who you are. You see, some of us take to renunciation naturally, just, the sheer word, the word alone brings up sheer joy of freedom. For some, it brings up, in my experience, it brings up, curiosity. As one person said to me, do you become a renunciate because you actually have a desire to become one? I said, yes. Because I knew she wasn't ready and fully grasping what our conversation was all about. And I was really talking to her friend who was adamant, but I didn't want to exclude the other. And I couldn't find a polite way of saying, I don't think you really want this. Until she said, should I want this? Yes. Oh, I don't. Okay, good. Then wait. Or don't do it at all. It's fine. So the question of whether to become a renunciate is already answered by you, yourself. And it should feel as natural to you because this is what you've been doing whether you knew it or not all this time. So having said that, how can we work on overcoming the ego through detachment, through attitudes of letting go of certain desires in the world and putting our minds more on God? That's really what the theme is going to be. So, having said that, we're going to listen now to Swamiji read from his book, watch a video rather. It was something he did in a satsang for a number of us in Gorgon back in 2010. And so this is when we were all living together in one house. Dharmini was there, Haridas, Roma, Jayaji, Dhyanaji, many others. We were all just there living together. And so Swamiji, after giving the first Nayaswami order initiation in India, which he did on January 5th, Master's birthday, and then just a few days later, he had us over to his house. And then, well, you'll see the rest. Remember, this was an informal satsang with the people who were living in the community at the time, and some close friends who didn't live with us all, but were there all the time serving. And so, it's not the formal structure of a class, so Swamiji would speak in this direction and that direction sometimes, as he would in a satsang. But it gives us, hopefully, a feeling, too, of what it would be like to be there with him, but also to hear, of course, what he has to say. So we'll watch that now. It's about 15 minutes or so, and then I'll say a few more things and we'll close up. Okay? Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly did. It was fun to be back in that moment, but also what Swamiji's teaching is just very helpful for overcoming the ego. I'd like to end with a few practical suggestions that he gives from that same book, A Renunciate Order for the New Age, which we'll send the link out to you. It's free online to read. It's easy enough to remember the website, nayaswami.org. So Naya swami.org, nayaswami.org, and you'll see the first link on the side or second link, the book, and just click on it and you can read the whole thing. But he's reading from chapter 2, I think, chapter 1 or 2, but he gives in chapter 9, which is entitled Transcending the Ego, many practical suggestions, and I wanted to go over a few each week of this class so that you might reflect on them and see if any of them appeal to you as something you'd like to put into practice in your life. Normally, when it gets this late in the class, people start running out because of traffic or because they have their car waiting and so on, and we don't have that. And you can say, yes, but I've got to go. So let me give you these suggestions here. When someone tells a good story, don't try to top it with another one. Let his story receive the appreciation it deserves. Laugh appreciatively. Be generous. Allow him this moment in the limelight. Okay, you were just listening to me? Sorry, Prasanna was looking at me so intently, I thought he was trying to say, your mic's off, or, something like that. And it's so helpful because you could say, yeah, but I got a really good story, but it's such a perfect word for it. Okay, I'll just sit and enjoy your time in the limelight. No, as he says, be generous. And suddenly it opens the heart, like Prem was, asking about. Because we say, oh, I'm giving this rather than just jumping in and taking. I'm just giving and, saying, oh, how wonderful. Let us all enjoy what he said, rather than having to register my presence all the time. When someone praises you, consider, before you respond, whether even a modest disclaimer of worthiness might not make you appear to be slighting his opinion or his good taste. If, for example, someone compliments you on how nicely you are dressed, don't reply with a deprecating laugh, "What, these old rags?" It would be far better simply to thank him. Or, again, if he compliments you for something you've done, answer him, "Thank you, though your praise belongs to God, who alone is the true doer." 3. When someone has a good idea, even one you yourself have already had, you may find it helpful to say simply, "That's a good idea." Don't say, "Yes, I've often had that same thought myself." And I find that one very helpful, this suggestion, if only because of its extreme applicability to myself, but because, you see, why say, "I had the same idea"? Because it seems like, no, but I mean, I'm agreeing, I'm encouraging him in what he said, it's true, but we are unnecessarily referring the conversation back to ourselves. Why not just say, "Good idea"? How many times did I make a suggestion to Swamiji if he asked about, trivial things, and he would say, "That's a good idea," and I would think, oh, that's nice. I was able to share a good idea, an idea that Swamiji liked. Then I read this, and I wondered, how many times did Swamiji actually also think, but not say, "I had the same idea myself"? Probably every time. But you see, again, he was generous. His job was not to show how he was right in every situation, which is what I found him to be, I have to say, but to encourage us. It's sort of like if you're a math teacher and you're teaching children addition, and you say 7 plus 8, and they say 15. You say, "Yes, but I knew the answer before you did." Just to say. No, it's who cares? Your job is to help them, is to make them strong. So Swamiji always encouraged us in that way by saying "good idea" or "let's try it" or "that's a good point" and all these things. But he had it all figured out already, so much of it. 4. If someone makes an incorrect statement, don't bother to correct him. unless you consider it important to do so. But if it does seem important enough to speak up, then, instead of flatly contradicting him, make it clear first that you know he is interested only, as you are, in the truth. You see, you can be tentative. You can say, well, that's confusing because, I had actually heard it a different way, but maybe I heard it incorrectly, even though you very well know you heard it correctly. But it leaves it tentative rather than saying, no, wrong. Someone did that. I saw them ask a question and ask for answers from the students in the audience, and every time someone gave the wrong answer, she said, no. Just, from this point of, I know the right answer, until somebody finally said the right answer, probably out of sheer dumb luck and guessing, and she went, that is correct. And the rest of us just, felt like fools. So don't be like that. I should also say, though, Swamiji was just talking about, I don't even know what it's like to be angry, and it reminded me in the same context of people praising or criticizing you. Anyway, there was too many stories, so I've picked the one that I wanted to share. Somebody said to him in a different case, he shared a story where he was giving a lecture and he said, I don't even, what's the point in feeling vindictive? I don't know that I've ever felt like I wanted revenge on someone for something they'd done to me. And some person came up to him at the end of the lecture and said, Really? Really? You've never felt that? What makes you say that? Are you sure? Are you saying it's wrong to feel that? And how can you really have never felt that? And are you thinking, on and on and on and on? I wonder if she wasn't having revenge on him for making that statement. But in any case, instead of saying, well, I told the truth. Maybe you want to look at yourself. Maybe you ought to. No, he didn't say anything like that. And he didn't say, my statement stands. He said, well, probably. He said that I'm so busy with so many other flaws, I just don't have time for this one. You see, he was gracious about it. Why unnecessarily argue with someone, even about a truth about himself? Because the person was just hostile and closed to what he was saying, and he was trying to find a way to open the person. I have to tell another story. I can't help it. Haridas was going around putting out pieces of paper on people's car, advertising a lecture of Swami Kriyananda. Gosh, I wish he had put one on my car and I could have gone back in the day, in the early days in California. And somebody came out to his car and saw this piece of paper and started just screaming, because he was a member of a different religion and he did not appreciate this being put on his very holy and sacred car. And so he began, after Haridas. And Haridas politely just stood there and took it and took it and took it until he decided not to take any more. And so in the middle of the tirade against him, Haridas Ji said, "Stop!" And the man was shocked and he stopped. And Haridas said, "I'm very happy for you that you are strong in your way. And I'm sure it's right for you. I am very strong in my way. Now, I know that I'm not going to convince you. And you're, I have to say, not going to convince me. So let's spend our time trying to convince other people." And the man looked at him and then smiled and opened his arms for a hug and said, "I can live with that, brother." And that was it. Haridas was finding a point of common ground, and then there was no argument. So, anyway, he's a saint, I have to say it. When someone tells a joke, don't tell another one unless you think it will add to the conversation. Don't speak, in other words, merely to be heard or out of a wish to top him. You'll see it so often. Someone tells a joke, and before the laughter can even occur, someone said, and then, did you hear what the sambar said to the dosa?" And it's just like, just let's enjoy the first joke rather than, no, I have to have the microphone. Don't be self-effacing. Simply show calm respect to everyone. Show respect even to foolish people, and more so, if anything, to children, because of the common tendency to speak to them condescendingly. The children may be wiser than you think. But I have found that even foolish people may sometimes be used by God to keep one humble. Swamiji said he was talking to a woman who would kind of go on and on and on in sort of a somewhat foolish way. And when she sat down, and he was very busy, but she sat down to talk to him, and she started going on in this way, his first tendency was to think, to look at his watch and think, okay, how long is this going to take before I can get back to more pressing matters? And then he thought, that's not a very humble thought. God can speak to anyone. Can speak to me through anyone. And he let me see if God is trying to tell me something. And then he sat and gave her his full attention. And just in that moment, in the next sentence, she said something to him. He said that he really needed to hear, and made a suggestion about the community that was very helpful for him. Lastly, for today, in conversation, don't wait impatiently for your chance to speak your piece. Listen respectfully, and if possible, listen with interest. There's a little bit of humor in there. Listen, if possible, with interest. Try to make it a conversation, not a competition of monologues. Again, how often do we see it? Two people are talking to each other, but, it's as if they both have earplugs in. And they're just saying what they're wanting to say with no reference to what the other person is saying. It's just monologue A and B overlapping, interlaced. It's not a conversation. And so it's very helpful, because if you give people your attention and listen with interest, they will often feel that and they will appreciate it. And then they may be inclined to do the same for you later. But in a way, it's a kind of healing to offer people just by listening. How much listening goes on in this world these days? Not as much as there could be. We're all too busy, all too fast, all too, I'm sorry, what were you saying? I was looking at something on Facebook. I was actually looking at your profile page on Facebook. You've got the person right there. That's the profile. Look at them. But no, oh, look at this. Oh, Switzerland. Oh, well, you went there. Well, not right now. And you see? So, anyway, I kind of, it's incomplete, but to not be able to see you off into the night